Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, thank you so much for visiting my channel. My name is Elena and I live in South Korea. Today, I will be sharing with you 5 lessons that I learned while living abroad. If you're interested to hear what these 5 lessons are, then just keep on watching. So I'm going to start with the very first point, and that is there is no one right way to live. I say this because having lived in 4 different countries, I've just noticed that people's priorities and people's values are so vastly different. There's so many pathways to happiness. There's so many different ways that you can achieve the goal of being happy. There's not one right way to do things. There's not one right way to live your life. For example, value systems in countries. Starting with the US, valuing work with family is about the same. I think now it's changing a little bit more to valuing work more than family. In Morocco, for example, family is like everything. And the purpose of a job is to supply for the family. That's the whole purpose of a job. I believe the majority of the population, maybe unless you're from a larger city and you're highly educated, then a job is not supposed to be something that identifies you as a person. It's not something that is a part of who you are. It's only a means to an end and to provide for your wife and your children. Like a big part of the society, the man provides for the whole family. And in Korea, it's like completely the opposite. In Korea, the value is over work, and then family's like, it's like off the screen because it's so low. And you can even see this in the statistics. In 700 and some odd years, the population is set to be extinct if the trends continue. And in 2020, there was more deaths than there were births in Korea. So that tells you a lot about their value systems, right? The values here are not really the same as maybe in some other countries. And I think this kind of goes with a lot of different factors. Like for example, Korea grew really fast. Really fast. It went from an undeveloped country to a first world country within 1 generation. You know, and you can even see this in the differences in the generations. They built this country, you know, the older generations that are still alive today, they built this country from the ground up. Whereas the younger generations are focused on careers and advancing their work, their job, whatever it is that they're doing. I think if you live in the United States, it's an even bigger lesson to learn because we are not a homogenous society. Like we get our influences from all over the world because there's so many immigrants that live there. There's so many people from all over the world that move there, and just our history in general. It's a big mixing pot, right? So people's values and people's goals are going to be so vastly different because it's not a homogenous society. And in the end, people do the best that they can with what they have. People do the best that they can with what they have and with what they know and with what they're able to do. And I used to be actually really judgmental of people who didn't follow the life's path that I thought that they're capable of following. But really, you know, it's not right for me to judge that because I don't know their situation, I don't know their family history, I don't know their ability, I don't know their financial situation, right? Like, it's so wrong for me to judge someone based on the actions that they make and the choices that they make in life. I still, honestly, like, I still judge people. I still say,
oh, she could have done so much more. Oh, he could have been this. Oh, why is she choosing to do this? Like, she has the capability of doing these different things, and why isn't she doing this career?
Things like that. But I check myself, like I'm way more self-aware, and I check myself and I stop myself and I'm like, yo, it is not your place to judge somebody for choosing a different life path than what you had envisioned for them. And if you think about it, when we judge somebody for making some kind of choice, we're putting our projections of that person onto them. The United States is full of so many different value systems, and it varies from person to person, it varies from immigrant to immigrant, it varies from family history to family history. So that's just like my 2 cents. If you disagree, I want to hear in the comments. Like, I'm really interested to see people who disagree, because again, it's important that we see different points of view and we try to talk it out, you know, not try to change people's minds, but just listen out to each other. Before I move on to the next one, I think I do need to preface this by saying that I myself am an immigrant to the US. Me and my mother immigrated when I was almost 9 years old. I've always felt different. I've always felt like I didn't fully fit in with everyone else. Like, I always thought differently. I always viewed the world a little bit differently. I always wanted to challenge thinking, and sometimes it's seen as argumentative, whereas for me it's seen as challenging, you know, thinking and questioning, and maybe it isn't supposed to be this way, maybe it's actually this way. Because, you know, for me, growing up in Ukraine until the age of 9, I might have experienced something in a completely different way and in a completely different light, you know. So I've always felt different. I guess the word for that is third culture, which means like, at home, you are in one culture, which is the culture of your parents, and then outside of the home, you're in the second culture, which is the US culture, but you yourself are kind of a mix of the two, so you're the third culture. The next point is that everybody has the same desires. We all want to be happy. We all want peace in the world, and we all want what's best for our kid. Again, I'm going to say that there are exceptions. I completely understand. You might think that you have nothing in common, or very little in common, or very little to talk about with someone. But honestly, you can have like hours-long conversations with somebody who has a completely different life, from a completely different world than you. We have a lot more in common with each other. Humor. That's one thing that can connect to anybody, and I think humor is universal. There are so many things that we will all laugh at, right? Talking about what makes us happy. How do we achieve this goal of being happy and at peace? Wanting the best for our kids. I mean, if you're a parent and you're talking to a parent, I feel like there's going to be a lot in common that you're going to have. My point is that it's important that we meet people who are from different backgrounds than us. Yes, you may come across and you may meet people from all different backgrounds and all over the world, but I still see a lot of separation between groups of people. And I kind of understand that in a way too, because we are humans and we want to be around people who are like us and who look like us, right? But I think it's also important that we make friends and form like deeper relationships with people who are different from us, because it's important that we learn things, you know, like it's important that we're challenged to think differently. It's important that we hear stories that are different from ours. Like, the world is so much more complicated. It's not black and white. There's not one perfect answer to everything, but you're able to look at things through many, many different lenses. The next point is, we will always believe that we are right. I say this because, you know, of course we all meet people who are so convinced that they are right, and there's really no room for conversation or friendly debate. And I just can think of some experiences that I had in the States where there was really no space for like a friendly debate or to share different ideas. I felt like I always had to agree with everything that somebody said. And in Morocco, it's the same way when it comes to religion, because obviously it's a homogenous country religious-wise. Everybody is Muslim, everybody is born Muslim. Very, very, very few people leave Islam, and I know that there are some people who hide as well, their true selves. But I remember an instance where this family was trying to convert me to Islam, and I don't believe that they did it the right way. They showed me a video of this Muslim imam, which is like a pastor, who was berating a woman who questioned Islam, and she was Christian. And the family knew I was Christian, and that was just not the right way. To berate someone for believing something is just not the right way to convince them that you're right. And I came to the conclusion during our exchange, I was trying so hard to be diplomatic and nice about it, even though it was really hurtful to see that everyone will always think that they're right. When speaking religious-wise, Muslims will always think that their religion is 100% the right religion. Buddhists will always think that their beliefs and way of life is 100% the right one. Hindus, the same thing. Christians, Catholics, right? Every sector of a religion is 100% convinced. I've just learned it's better to just sit and listen and take in what they say and try to empathize with their beliefs and see through their lenses and really be an active listener. You don't have to agree with what they say, but you can be an active listener and validate their beliefs. Another interesting point that I have is there is no one right way to do things. And I don't mean like life-wise or whatever. I mean this by simple things like cutting onions. Okay, so the women in this village in Morocco that I lived in, they cut their onions so differently. Some women, not all women, anyways, there's always exceptions. Some of the women that I knew, the way that they cut their onions is they held it in their hand. There was no cutting board, by the way. They don't use cutting boards in Morocco very often. They just cut things in their hand, which is amazing to me. But they hold the onion and they will cut it like this. Then they rotate it 90 degrees. Then they cut it again. So now you have like a checkerboard type pattern on the onion, and then you cut it straight across. Then you do the same thing. You cut, rotate it, cut, then cut under until you have a pile of perfectly cut onions. And I think we sometimes think that there's only one way to do something, and there's so many different ways that will always surprise you to do like many different things. And another example is like food-wise, palates are so different depending on where you live and how you grew up, what you grew up eating. In Morocco, avocados are seen only as desserts. They're not seen as like guacamole or a salad topping or anything that is savory. In Morocco, it is only a juice that you drink. So I know, so this was an interesting way because, I cooked something my way when I was in Morocco, the way that I would eat it. And I made like this Thai dish. I put avocados as a garnish on top of the dish, and I invited some Moroccan friends. Well, when they left and I was cleaning up the plates, guess what was left on every plate? Avocados. Nobody ate the avocados, and they're not cheap either. So I'm like, wow, like there's no one right way to eat avocados. For them, there is only one right way, which is dessert. For us, there's only one right way, which is a side dish, right? Or like something that's paired with a savory or an acidic dish. This just comes to mind that it's important that we don't shame people for thinking differently, for doing something differently, for eating something differently. I grew up with eating Russian food. And whenever I would eat something and I had an American friend over, they would always say, "Ew, this is so disgusting. Ew, why would you eat that? It's so gross." And it would really, really hurt my feelings. Like, I know children are mean. Children don't think things through as thoroughly as adults do. It was just so hurtful that, I had to hide that part of myself from my friends. Now I don't care because I'm an adult, but something that a Russian person would love, like caviar or smoked fish, is something that is seen as disgusting by many Americans, right? And it's seen as wrong, and like, why would you eat that? So that could be applied to any culture that eats something differently, and another culture is like shocked that they would eat it this way. I find myself judging a lot of the things that Koreans eat here as well. For example, pizza that is topped with corn. I'm like, why would you eat pizza that is topped with corn? Why? Or pizza that is topped with Caesar salad. What? Like pizza that is topped with Caesar salad. Why would you eat that? I don't understand. I'm so confused. And then there is a place called Isaac Bread that has grilled cheese sandwiches. And you would think, ooh, grilled cheese. I love grilled cheese. It's so good, right? In America, yes, we have a different one way of making it, right? In Korea, it's grilled cheese with sweet bread. The bread is sweet, but it works. It works in Korea. Koreans like it. I mean, it's a very popular chain. It hasn't busted. It works. But a lot of us expats, we're just like, what? Why is this bread so sweet? I don't understand. I'm so confused. Why is this bread sweet? So, there's a lot of sweet and savory things that are like mixed in together, and they work for Koreans, but the expat community just will not eat them, will not touch them. So here's another example. There's no one right way to do things. There's no one right way to live, and there's no one right way to do something or eat something. And my last point is that it is possible to communicate with someone who has a different language than what you have. Communication is something that is such a big part of who we are. Honestly, communication is our fourth necessary need, right? We need food, shelter, clothing, and I think we need communication. Communication is an innate part of human nature. And just life would not exist without communication. So it is possible to live in a foreign country and not know the language. It is possible. It's doable. You can do it. Because we will find ways to communicate with someone. Even if we have no words in common, we will charades it. I do a lot of really dramatic expressions with my face. I'm like, like today I was late for an appointment. Things like that. It's so, you can find ways to get a point across without a language in common. And sometimes a language might have a word from a different language that you know. So you could just mix up languages and add in a few words from something else that you know. Luckily for us English speakers, English is making its way into so many languages. For example, there's Konglish here. There's so many English words in the Korean language. So it's really, really helpful for us English speakers. And I lived in a village where the main language that people spoke, I didn't learn. I learned Arabic. And I would spend hours in a room with women who were speaking that native language, which is the indigenous language of Morocco. And I was able to communicate with them somehow. Somehow I was able to communicate. If we're eating food and I would be like,
yeah,
yummy. It's super dramatic, but that you have to be a little bit more dramatic when you're not using your words and you're using your body language. So I think that's just what's so beautiful about the world. That is what connects us as people. That is another thing that we have in common. We have so much in common with each other, even if we're from vastly different cultures and vastly different parts of the world. I think this is all that I have to share for this video. It's getting a bit lengthy, But I really hope that you enjoyed this talk, and I want to hear what you have to say. I think maybe I said some things that were a little bit controversial. I don't know, maybe not. But I really want to hear what you say. Please leave a comment below, and other than that, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye. If you enjoyed listening to this part of the video, then I suggest that you head on over to the video on the right side of the screen, which is the other part of my two-part series of lessons to learn for a more peaceful world.